We're live when you're ready, Neil. Okay, welcome back. Councillor Toy, when you're ready, please. Agenda item 9 in Hindringham, which is a variation of condition RV/24/0496.
Thank you, Chair. We're on page 31 of the agenda. This application relates to a potato store at Roe Hill Farm, Walsingham Road, Hindringham. It's to vary condition 11 of the original permission for the store to allow delivery and dispatch from the store on a limited number of Sundays during the year, as detailed at the top of the report. Varying the condition would allow the applicant to better deal with weather conditions during harvest time and the demands placed on them by the crisp manufacturer to whom the potatoes go to. Currently, the condition does not allow for delivery and dispatch on Sundays unless previously agreed by the local planning authority. The full wording of condition 11 is set out in the planning history section of the report. The reason for the condition relates to residential amenity. As the report explains, the application was amended to refer to specific periods during the year rather than year-round, which reflects the operational requirements of the applicant and how they have operated in recent years. The first slide shows the general location of the site, which is marked by the red cross. Hindringham village is to the southeast, approximately 2.3 kilometres from the site. This shows the location in more detail with the site edged red. Yellow triangles are existing dwellings. That dwelling immediately to the east of the site did not exist at the time of the original application. That was formed from a conversion of a agricultural building on a former county farm, which after an appeal decision in 2021. The nearby certified camping site referred to in the report is indicated by the orange blob. This is a location with the aerial photo overlaid. It also shows the bunds around the boundaries of the site. This is the photo of the store. Loading and unloading takes place in the area to the front where the doors are. This shows the access into the site from Walsingham Road, which, as you can see, is basically a single track lane. This shows the bund on the eastern boundary of site, but it continues around the back as well. But that's the bund on the boundary with the closest dwelling. That is a dwelling immediately to the east of the site. It's a converted agricultural building on the former county farm farmyard, which I've referred to before, granted on appeal in 2021. This is a dwelling further to the east and also shows the access to the closest camping site. That's an exempted site, so it's a small site with it allows for up to 5 caravans and 10 tents. There's no actual facilities on those sort of sites. Now, just a couple of photos showing what Walsingham Road is like. I would draw your attention to the main issue being considered does not relate to the highway impacts. It relates to whether there's any impact on residential amenity. These are the main issues. With regards to residential amenity, some Sunday working has taken place over the last few years with the agreement of the local planning authority. It has, however, been very occasional, only on 8 Sundays in the last 3 years, as set out in the report, and has not resulted in any reported complaints about noise and disturbance. This is also not one of the main concerns raised in representations in response to the application as first submitted, and no representations on that ground have been received following the amendments to the proposal. The applicant has made it clear that he does not want to work on Sundays, which is reflected in the number of times he has worked Sundays in the last 3 years, if it can be avoided. He just wants the flexibility to deal with external issues that arise and would avoid the need for them having to contact the local planning authority every time Sunday working should be necessary. With regards to any other harmful effects that would arise from varying the condition, the main concerns raised in representations relate to highway impacts. Whilst Walsingham Road is narrow, it's not atypical of much of the district. Importantly, varying the condition would not result in any material change in the number of vehicle movements, as the capacity of the store doesn't change. It's not topped up every time it's unloaded, because it damages the potatoes inside, is what I was told when I visited the site. Additional movements on Sundays would therefore be offset by a corresponding reduction on other days. Finally, having regard to the government's planning practice guidance, which is set on page 34 of the agenda, this is not something that can reasonably be considered now, having regard to the nature of the proposal, and that there are no conditions attached to the current permission relating to lorry routing. Furthermore, such a condition would be extremely difficult to monitor and enforce. Access works which should have been carried out previously are being organised by the applicant, and the condition is recommended to secure these within a number of months. The recommendation is for approval subject to conditions relating to the matters listed. And that's the end of my presentation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, to speakers. Parish Council Speaker, Sarah Hayden. Like to come to the microphone front, please, and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Sarah Hayden. I'm clerk for Hindringham Parish Council, and I'm commenting on behalf of the Parish Council, which objects to this application. As background information, 2 of our parish councillors have been involved in farming all their lives, one driving HG vehicles for some years, together with farming as a tenant farmer, as well as both living in the villages of Binham and Hindringham, as did their fathers and grandfathers, so are well placed to inform the Parish Council on this application. The amendments to the original application were made, as the Planning Officer states, following discussions with the applicant regarding their operational requirements and how they have operated in recent years. The Parish Council did not submit further comments on the application following those amendments because their original objections were raised on past experience of the operations carried out under the yearly consent. The report comments on lack of complaints in recent years to Sunday working, and we would say that as far back as 2017 and up to last year, this Parish Council corresponded with NNDC to check that consent had been obtained to operate outside the hours allowed. As consent had already been given, a complaint was not made. We are aware that one of our original objections regarding the splay to the site not being completed according to the original permission has now been resolved. The reason the condition was imposed in the original planning permission was to control the noise emitted from the site, and although the applicant states that the noise is less than that associated with loading sugar beet, those who live in villages will know that sugar beet is loaded from the field, which varies from year to year, is usually well away from residences and caravan campsites, and can be heard considerable distances from the site. Therefore, if the council is minded to approve the application, we would ask that the hours for loading, unloading be limited to 0900 hours and 1600 hours, as suggested by the Environmental Health Officer, to give nearby residents and tourists some respite. Our suggestion of a set route for HGVs was to spread and lessen disruption to Walsingham Road users and Hindringham Village at a time of increased holiday use. If loaded lorries left the site turning right onto the Binham-Hindringham Road, at least they would be in tune with caravans who are generally leaving a site on a Sunday or Monday bank holiday rather than arriving. For information, Black Box data taken between the 12th and 19th of December 2023 recorded 7,727 vehicles through Hindringham, which is no doubt considerably less than bank holidays. To and from this site in 2023, on the 3 Sundays worked in spring, there was an average of 22 to 24 vehicle movements per day and 22 per day in September. We note from the report, Government Planning Practice Guidance, that the local planning authority may also impose new conditions, and perhaps a route condition could be reconsidered if this application is to be approved. Finally, we would say that although we understand the difficulties of ground conditions when lifting the crop and in easing the delivery to walkers for our lovely salty snacks, this is not a crop such as peas that needs to be delivered to factory immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no objecting speaker and no supporting speaker. That's a local member. Cover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. The committee will no doubt be relieved to hear that I will keep this brief. Having attended the parish council meetings at Indringham, I've heard them debate this application at length. They are extremely concerned about the impact the Sunday working is having on the village community. Both the amount of noise generated and the number of vehicular movements, often at considerable speed through the village, are the focus of their concerns. Whilst officers say that highways concerns are not the main issue here, I do think they should be. You have seen for yourselves the nature of the roads being used and their size. We have heard many times on different applications that the speed of vehicles in relation to rural roads being used is a serious cause for concern, and that such vehicles are creating a real risk of serious injury in an accident. The size and weight of the vehicles in question in relation to this application only increase that risk. In addition, this is a small rural village whose residents, whilst understanding they are part of an agricultural community, also have a right to the enjoyment of their properties and to be able to run their own businesses without being impacted by others. I believe the parish council have made very sensible and constructive requests to reach a workable solution that addresses the concerns voiced by residents. One of which, as we have heard, is in line with officer recommendations. Their inclusion and implementation, whilst allowing the business to continue to operate, helps to address the concerns raised for residents and holidaymakers going forwards. It has been reported to me that such measures have been tried in the past, but have then later in the season failed, which is largely why this application is before you today. I would hope that the business involved will work with its clients to ensure these measures are adhered to moving forwards. Surely it's a workable solution. I would therefore ask the committee to add these conditions to their approval, if indeed they are minded to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Could officers just confirm or otherwise the feasibility of requesting a fixed routing for vehicles?
Well, all the lorry movements through Indringham are not clearly not attributable solely to this farm or this potato store, because there's other farms in the locality and there are other farms on the around the village close to the centre as well. So, but the feasibility how is in terms of how we would monitor it. The applicant would have no control over the lorry drivers, and whatever route they take, it would require traffic regulation orders and stuff to sign it and things. So that's why we think it would be extremely difficult to monitor and enforce. I mean, if you saw a lorry going down that road, you'd have to monitor the condition. You'd have to follow it and see if it was actually going to or from the store. So yeah, that's what would, in my opinion, would make it difficult.
So effectively it would be unenforceable. Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to ask a question of clarification. We are just talking about 8 Sundays in any given calendar year. Is that right? It says
The
weekends
yeah.
In each of these periods. That's the April
Yeah.
to June and the September to November.
Yes, yeah, and the 8 Sundays referred to as the number of times the worked on Sundays during the last 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
that's not a condition of this approval, that they only stick to 8 Sundays in the calendar year. I'm looking at the application.
The actual it says no more than 4.
4 weekends within each of those periods. Yeah. Yeah.
So that'd be 8 Sundays a year.
Yeah.
In any kind. Thank you.
That would be consistent.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Patterson.
I think the impact, thank you, Chair, sorry. I think the impact on campus between September, October and November is going to be pretty limited. That's pretty much out of season. I understand about the April, May and June, but we are just talking about 8 weekends a year if needed. So it seems a reasonable request to me, so I'd like to propose.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holiday?
Could the times be 9 till 4 as suggested by Environmental Health?
Sure.
Well, they've asked for 9 till 1900, so as for the rest of the week. I mean, we can ask them, but that's what we're considering at the moment.
And, I think lorries coming from Leicester will turn up when they turn up. It'd be difficult to force that. Follow on, councillor.
Is the lorry coming from Leicester? The lorries might be going to Leicester, but are they coming from Leicester?
I don't know where they come from, but the deliveries
come from.
go to the potatoes go to Walkers in Leicester.
I've got some sympathy with the neighbours though at 7 o'clock in the morning to have this unloading on a Sunday. I mean, not everybody's up at 5, are they?
Combine out there at 5 in the morning, of course. Okay, yes, Jill. Ms. Fuller.
Yeah, just one comment with that. I think it may be tricky to enforce times too much on those 8 occasions, because if they're anything like British Sugar, they will be given a time slot for the factory and they have to meet that time slot. So I would think that's probably why they've asked for the times they have. And I'm happy to second
Okay,
the proposal.
see your hand up, councillor Varley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application brought back some memories. Actually, I used to be a farm worker and indeed work on the potato harvest, but certainly not for this farm, this business. I think it's important that we do pass this application. We do have, you know, a fantastic farming community in our district, and we must support the agricultural industry. The Sunday is to be used if needed, and certainly the potato harvest, like most of the industry, it can fluctuate. So it's important to have that day if machinery does break down, if they are behind. So I have no issue with that. Although I am very sympathetic to the residents, the concerns raised by the parish council, I just don't think it would be viable to have the restrictions of the time. We would actually be restricting them, you know, by 5 hours, and that's a lot of daylight. That's a lot of, you know, time which they couldn't then harvest. So I just don't think it would be viable, and certainly in regards of travelling as well. So I'm happy to second this application as it
Councillor Boyle's
is.
already seconded.
Well, I will third this application, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Toy, then we go to the vote.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just to confirm, this has been happening by individual request for particular days. And basically this is just regularising that so they don't have to come along. Is that correct? That was my
Well,
understanding.
the way the conditions worded at the moment, they have to get the agreement of the local planning authority every time. Yes, so
Yeah.
we have agreed to working on Sundays previously.
Yeah, so this has been going on. So yeah, it's
Yeah, but
really,
it's-
really
it's-
nothing new.
it's-
And it's no new loading on the system. It's just allowing them more flexibility in when to do it. And having been an HGV driver, 5 hours is half a driving day if you can't pick up. So yeah, it does, you know, but the way industry works now, we're just in time, restricting hours, whilst I accept the arguments. It would have been nice to have seen routes in and routes out, and that can be done informally. I've seen that when I've driven for companies where you request the driver comes in and out a particular way, and maybe we could ask the applicant to do that and to work with locals. He could do that informally, and I've certainly been given that when I've had jobs to do. So, but clearly it's something that would be difficult for us to enforce. So I accept that argument. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we have recommendation to approve. First by councillor Paterson, seconded by councillor Boyle. Time to go to the vote, please. Councillor Boyle,
Yes.
councillor Fisher,
For.
Councillor Hankins, Councillor Heinrich,
four,
Councillor Holiday, Councillor MacDonald,
four,
Councillor Patterson,
Four.
Councillor Ringer,
Four.
Councillor Toy,
For.
Councillor Varley, Councillor Vickers,
4.
it's carried, Chairman.
Okay, the application is approved. And we move finally to the certificate of lawfulness in Clay next to C, Clive, if you prefer it. CL/24/0447. Watson.
Thank you. Just wait for the presentation to get loaded. Thank you. Okay, yeah, just before I start, we're on page 39, but there is a minor change to report to the report. The sentence at the bottom of page 42, starting moreover, should be deleted as it's not relevant. The windows referred to are subject to a separate planning application currently pending consideration. So this application is for a certificate of lawfulness for an operation that has already been carried out. In this case, it's the addition of render to the external walls of an agricultural building at Cook's Marsh, which is off the west side of Holt Road in Cly. We don't have many of these applications coming to committee, so at the bottom of page 39, there's a brief explanation as to what this type of application is. It is not considered against planning policies, and the planning merits of what have been done are not a consideration. All that can be considered is whether on the facts of the case the specific matter is or is not lawful. So in summary, render has been applied to the external face of the exposed blockwork walls of the building. This constitutes a building operation, but such operations are excluded from the definition of development in the Town and Country Planning Act, where they do not materially affect the external appearance of the building. This involves a subjective judgment in this case, and on page 42 of the agenda, reference is made to how the courts have established what such a judgment should involve. So turning to the slides. First, we have the site in the general location of the site marked by the red cross, which is off the west side of Holt Road and to the south of the main part of Cly itself. Yeah. It's playing up. That's it. No. Sorry. Yeah, that's it. Sorry about that. Now we have the location in more detail with the site edged red. As can be seen, it sits back from Holt Road, accessed via a private track with agricultural buildings immediately to the west. Now the aerial photo showing the site location. And now a series of views of the building to help with the consideration of whether or not there's been a material change to the external appearance of the building. So this first slide is at close range from the private access tract. On the left is a building now that was taken last week, and on the right, before the render was applied, that photo dating from April 2023. Now the view from partway along the access, again on the left is the building as it is now, and then on the right as it was in April 23 before the render was applied. This is the view from the end of the access track at its junction with Holt Road. Again, same applies as it is now on the left and as it was then in March 2023 on the right. These are other views of the building taken last week. On the left is a view from the Norfolk Coast Path, where it's elevated above the Post Road near the sluices to the west of Cly, and the view across the A149 Post Road. On the right is a view southwest from Holt Road itself, just before you get to the first house on that side of the road. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any comparable photographs on the old application files, which showed the building previously. So the only issue for consideration is whether the application of the render has materially affected the external appearance of the building as a whole. And the recommendation is to issue the certificate confirming that the operations carried out are lawful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, we have some speakers on this, Parish Council. Councillor Richard Allen. Come to the front, please. Yeah, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Clyde Parish Council strongly object to the rendering of the barn at Cook's Marsh. Councillors all agree with the comments of North Norfolk District Council Planning Officer and North Norfolk District Council Landscape Officer on the and on the original planning application for the render, which was refused. The landscape officer commented the applicants I can't see the applicants Right, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the intention was to alter the appearance of the building by the way of the render, which materially altered the appearance of the building and divorce it from the buildings that are adjacent to it, such as the farm buildings. It is also loose proximity. It's in compatibility with the adjacent buildings. Looking from the east, it would have an impact, and looking from the west, you can see it. The photographs which you showed really don't give a clear view. They just look normal, but if you visually look at it, rather than through a lens of a camera, you can see the difference from nearly all directions which are visible. Council agree with the landscape officer under the render does materially alter the appearance of the building, as I said with the photographs, especially altering the views from the southwest, which are aforementioned. Councillors also agree with the landscape comments regarding the sensitive nature of the site within the Norfolk Coast ANOB and in the river Glaven Valley landscape and on the undeveloped and on the undeveloped coast. The evidence in the original planning officer report closely details the impact on the rendering would have on something the adjoining landscape. The original application, which aforesaid was refused on May 23. In June 23, the applicant decided to go ahead and render the building. Well, it was over a weekend. Suddenly a gang of plasters arrived and the plastering was done. Which decided to go ahead and render. Which is why you're here now, to the application for a certificate of lawfulness being put in front of you. The applicant clearly ignored the decision, having no regard for the planning process and the planning legislation. This case, if approved, not only has detrimental impact on the precious landscape in the ANOB, but also give a green light to other developers to ignore planning decisions and planning policies. Clyde Parish Council asks members.
Your 3 minutes is up.
Yeah, I mean, that was quick. That's good. Thank you.
Right, I have no objecting speaker, no supporting speaker, local member, Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Chair. You may wonder why a certificate of legal development for render has been brought to the Development Committee. I was not party to this decision, but suspect it may be due to the planning history of this site. It has already been the subject of a certificate of legal development when the fibre cement sheet roof was replaced with metal sheeting and domestic Velux windows inserted in place of the existing translucent roofing. The community disagreed with the planner's opinion that this did not materially change the external appearance of the building, but it was approved under a CLD. The Burrows Day versus Bristol City Council 1996 judgment, which focuses on the materiality of external changes, is referred to in the officer's report. I wonder if this case had been invoked at that time, the new roof would not have been approved. There have been two previous planning applications, one withdrawn and one refused. These both included elevational changes. The first proposed vertical boarding and was withdrawn following objections by consultees. The second, which was refused, included rendered walls. The landscape officer considered that render would materially alter the appearance of the building. The planning officer thought that the changes proposed would fundamentally alter the appearance of the building. So today the committee is being asked whether the render has materially affected the external appearance of the building as a whole. I think this is clearly demonstrated in the before and after photographs. The planning officer references Burrows Day versus Bristol City Council 1996, which case turned on the meaning of section 55 2A2 of the Town and Country Planning Act, i.e. whether proposed changes materially affect the external appearance of the building. I've been through the Lexis transcript of this case, and I quote the judge's opinion with regard to materiality. The external appearance must be materially affected. The effect must be more than de minimis. I think this is the case with the barn. The judge goes on to say, in my judgment, whether the external appearance of a building is materially affected is likely to depend on the nature of the building and the nature of the alteration. Materiality must take into account the nature of the particular building it is proposed to alter. We should therefore take into account that this is a former utilitarian agricultural building in a protected rural setting. The judge does add, whether the effect of an alteration is material or not must, in my judgment, depend in part on the degree of visibility. The change we're discussing today is to highly visible elevations. I cannot see in the transcript of the Burrows Day case that, as quoted, the judge states changes have to be seen from a number of vantage points to be considered a material change. The application building does have neighbours, and the track to the barn is not private to it. So in conclusion, the landscape and planning officers previously considered render would materially alter the appearance of the building, and the Burrows Day case does not, in my interpretation, counter that. I therefore ask you to refuse this certificate of legal development.
Thank you, councillor. Could we just have these side-by-side images back on screen, please? Yeah, slide 5. Okay, before and after close up are clearly seen there. Remember, we're dealing with a certificate of lawfulness. It's not an application as the one that was rejected, PF 23-0001. I believe there's another application in the pipeline somewhere relating to this building. Entirely concern ourselves with, is there such a change that it is not lawful? In case we refuse, or we agree it is, in which case certificate of lawfulness is approved. Who wishes to go? Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, thank you to the case officer for the report and presentation this morning. I think it's really important to note in page 42 of at least page 42 of the electronic copy, and I quote, the colour of the render that has been applied to external walls is considered to be only subtly different to that of the exposed block work. And I think it's really good that we have those pictures in front of us now. It is related to design, and design can be subjective. So as a committee, we must be objective, and it's whether we believe that that render has detrimental impact to the surrounding area. And I don't believe it does. And I think, therefore, Mr. Chairman, I am happy to support the officer's recommendation, and therefore I will propose this. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Okay, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have considerable sympathy with Clyde Parish Council. Looking at the planning history and remembering what's come before us before, I'm sure we're going to have another chance to look at and revisit this one again. As for the certificate of lawfulness, I can't see much of a change. I'm sure those who live close to the building would see the difference between the lack of mortar lines. But as for the colour of the blockwork and the colour of the render, I can see very little, but I'm sure we'll have another chance to revisit this. So I would be happy to second.
Thank you, councillor Fisher. Anybody else? Councillor Toy.
I'd like to get my £10 in. I think the question is, does it look like a rural barn? Did it look like a rural barn? Is it similar colour? And we have to go with that. I understand what councillor Fisher's saying. We're well aware of how this site's had applications come and go. But our decision today is, does that look significantly different? And what we're seeing there is actually closer to it than you would normally expect to get as a member of the public on the main line road. So yeah, I'd have to go with it. So thank you to officers for the report.
Okay. Nobody else wishes to speak? We'll go to the vote, please. Councillor Boyle,
For.
councillor Fisher,
For.
councillor Hankins, councillor Heinrich, 4, councillor Holiday, councillor MacDonald,
4.
councillor Pattison,
4.
councillor Ringer,
4.
councillor Toy,
4.
councillor Barley, 4, councillor Vickers.
4.
That's carried, Chairman. Thank you. That concludes the agenda. You'll be pleased to know that our next scheduled meeting is not till the end of July. At the moment. So thank you for your attendance today and good luck to all over the next few weeks.